Boss fights have been a staple in gaming almost as long as games have been around. A perfect last challenge to cap off a level or world and put your skills to the test. Whether we're shooting them, stabbing them, or dropping them into lava, boss fights were always meant to be the final resistance, making sure you deserved to make it to the next section, or in some cases, to the end of the game. Before we begin, be sure to subscribe to MojoPlays and click on the links in the description to vote on upcoming content. As video games evolved, so too did the ways developers approached constructing an interesting boss battle. Sometimes it isn't enough just to be a tough enemy. They need to be more fleshed out too. While a final boss can be built up and characterized over the course of the game, it's actually much tougher when dealing with a boss who just rules over one level. Game creators experiment with different designs, how they're introduced, and how you fight them. Some of them have gone way off the rails in this quest, giving us some of the strangest and most ridiculous boss fights we've ever seen. The Metal Gear series, for example, has given us some truly memorable boss fights. Psycho Mantis shatters the fourth wall with his antics, and Fat Man has you disarming bombs while he rollerblades around trying to attack you. These fights kept players on their toes, forcing them to approach battles in unique ways, but their character designs were actually fairly normal. Bayonetta and No More Heroes featured increasingly insane boss designs, but the ways in which you fight them actually doesn't change all that much from how you fight other enemies in the game. But sometimes what makes a boss memorable isn't clever gameplay or good character design. Sometimes a boss is so absurd and different, it edges itself into the collective unconsciousness of gamers everywhere. For the strangest boss battle in all of gaming, there's no one that fits the description more perfectly than the great Mighty Pooh from Conker's Bad Fur Day.
Uh-oh.
Released back in 2001, Conker's Bad Fur Day was no stranger to controversy. It was actually the third game that Conker the Squirrel appeared in after his guest spot in 1997's Diddy Kong Racing, also for the N64, and 1999's Conker's Pocket Tales for the Game Boy Color. Both of these games made Conker seem like he was a family-friendly character, which is exactly what he was supposed to be actually. But when footage for Conker 64 was shown off by Rare, it was criticized for looking too much like other games that Rare made, like Banjo-Kazooie. So, instead of releasing the game as it was, Rare made the risky decision to basically start from scratch and give the world a game that was the opposite of what they were expecting. The family-friendly look of the game stayed the same, but the actual content was anything but. Conker's Bad Fur Day, as it was released, features alcoholism, gratuitous violence, strong language and sexual content, and one massive singing pile of shit. Yeah, the insanity meter reaches its peak about halfway through the game with this memorable boss fight. All of the enemies you encounter on your journey here range from weird to plain outlandish, and the bosses are no different. Each one forces you to approach it differently, and it's often in violently hilarious ways. While the other boss fights in the game are certainly bizarre, there's definitely no topping the great Mighty Pooh. You can find him in his lair, guarded by giant dung beetles, of course. Once you enter the arena, you hear an off-screen voice demand that you toss a piece of sweet corn into the nearby pit. After doing so, and after a pretty good Jaws reference, you get your first look at this fecal lord. Having to fight this disgusting monstrosity would be memorable enough, but instead of attacking you and starting the battle, the great Mighty Pooh begins to serenade you in what is a surprisingly good baritone. This gives players a moment to let the situation sink in. Yeah, you're actually about to fight a giant piece of crap.
Me. I am the great Mighty Pooh, and I'm going to throw my shit at you.
It's really the horrible little touches that make this character stand out, like the fact that his teeth are actually pieces of corn, or that he points to his butt when he sings about, chocolate starfish. Ugh. Just when you got your bearings about what you'll be fighting, then the battle begins. Throughout the game, Conker must stand on different spaces that are context sensitive to perform different actions, whether it be fighting an enemy or trying to make it to the next section. And every situation in the game is so ridiculous, this means that literally anything could happen when Conker stands on a context-sensitive space.
You guys ting. Ting. That's it.
That's it?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll press B.
So, what happens with the Great Mighty Pooh? Well, after tossing balls of crap for you to dodge, he begins to taunt you by popping out of pits around the room and belting out some more notes. Standing on the context-sensitive spaces will cause Conker to pull out a giant roll of toilet paper, which you gotta toss into the mouth of the Titan before he sinks down and reappears in a different pit. Each time you do this causes him to sing another clever nasty verse. He also begins to move and attack faster, keeping tempo with the music. After a few more hits though, you'll be able to literally flush him down the toilet with a nice nod to the Wizard of Oz.
Ah, you cursed squirrel, look what you've done! I'm blushing! Oh, what a world, what a world! Who'd have thought a good little squirrel like you could destroy my beautiful flagginess?
He might not be the toughest boss fight in the game, but he's certainly the most unforgettable. In a game that keeps you wondering what crazy character or scenario will come next, he's the perfect matchup for Conker to face. It's why he topped our list way back in 2013 for the top 10 ridiculous video game boss battles. Sure, there have been plenty of great boss fights. There have probably been a lot of great musical boss fights. And there have been bosses so weird we actually weren't sure how to fight them. But it's rare that all of these qualities are brilliantly put together into one ultra strange character. He's unlike anything we've seen in gaming before or since Conker's release, and we're sure he'll be at the top spot for strangest video game boss battle for quite a long time.
Now that's what I call a bowel movement.
Thanks for watching Mojo Plays. Be sure to subscribe and click on the link in the description below to check out our suggestion page and vote on what content you'd like to see us cover next.